Hey you, and welcome to my channel. My name is Tina and my aim is to improve your drawings just like others have done for me when I just started out. This week's video has a slightly different subject than the ones I normally draw. I love drawing wildlife, but I love animation movies as well, and after watching Raya and the Last Dragon, I was eager to get started on a drawing from the movie. I normally cover my drawings in depth, but I decided to do a video about essential tips to improve your artworks in pastel, and I chose this drawing that I worked on to be playing in the background. So, let's get started, shall we? As you could see, I started working on the hat at the top of my painting. One small tip I can give you, especially if you are a beginner, is to work from the top to the bottom and from left to right. Obviously, if you are left-handed, just switch this and work the other way around, from right to left. I love this process of drawing for a few reasons. When you start with pastel, you need to adjust to the amount of excessive dust, and even this is different depending from paper to paper. So one way that there will be less risk of contaminating other areas of the painting or drawing is by working in this manner. This will be particularly helpful when working on an easel. There is also less risk of smudging any part of your painting if you use a finger or the side of your hand to rest on some part of your drawing for support. This way, most of the time your hand will rest on a blank space of the drawing, so nothing to smudge. Although you could work around this with a piece of glassine paper underneath your hand. But the biggest reason why I think this is an important technique is the following. You don't become overwhelmed with your drawing as a whole. I find it much easier to work from section to section than doing everything at once. As you begin to improve, you might find that you actually prefer it the other way around. When you cover your entire drawing, starting with your underlayer and keep adding layers, you might find it easier to understand your composition, your colors, your values. In short, visualize where you want to go with it. But when you're just starting out, you already have so much going on, so I suggest keeping it simple and focusing on one section at a time. My second tip is to focus on your contrast. As you could see, when I started on the face of Raya, I started out with a very dark brown for the darkest areas. A more mid-tone that is kind of like the glue between your darkest values and your lightest values. And then of course a light color for my lightest areas. Make sure you plan out where your darkest values and your lightest areas need to go. Although you can use light colors over dark colors with pastel, you will never reach the same intensity as if there was no pastel there. Going over darker values kind of gives your light value a limitation as to how bright it can be. The same goes the other way around, even if it's much more subtle. So the key here is to really think through where your darkest values and your lightest values are, especially for your underlayer. Because you can see, as soon as I had that underlayer in, all I really did was play around with that contrast some more. I looked at my reference to decide where I needed to darken up some areas and lighten up others. Before I move on to the next tip, if you want to learn even more, subscribe to my newsletter. You'll find the link in the description below. I'll send out one newsletter each month, and included with that you'll receive 4 reference pictures you can use to create your own pieces. Some of the pictures I've already sent out include the following. Besides getting those reference pictures, you'll also be eligible to download my ebook, in which I give you 3 more tips to help you improve your drawings. Not only will you get these tips, you'll also get examples and actionable steps you can take. So make sure you get your copy now. Moving on to the third tip, another way you can reduce the excess of pastel or dust that comes off is through your paper choice. I think it will come as no surprise that I advise going for Pastel Mat from Clairefontaine. At the moment, this is the paper that can take the most layers, and this is because of the way it grips onto the pastel. I haven't found a paper yet that can do this in a similar way. If you like to learn more about papers, I've already done a small comparison on 4 well-known surfaces. I talk about Canson Mitaine and the Canson Mitaine Touch, as well as Hahnemulle Velour and of course Pastel Mat. Now, I've heard from some people saying that it's hard to get their hands on Pastel Mat, so I have ordered some other papers that have a great name like Pastel Card from Sennelier or some paper from UArt. I hope to test these out in the future and hopefully find a good paper as the Pastel Mat, or at least a very good runner-up. If you want to make sure that you don't miss out on that video, make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. Try using toned paper. I find that it makes it a whole lot easier to judge your contrast and your values, and this is so important like I mentioned earlier. Values are a big deal when it comes to drawing, and having tone paper helps you out because you already have that mid-tone on there. What I mean by this is that it becomes much easier to see how dark or how light you are going. If you would compare this to white paper, any mid-tone or dark color would immediately appear much darker on the white surface than it actually is. As a result, I find that by the end of the drawing on a white paper, I don't assess my values correctly and I need to go back in to correct that. Working on a mid-tone paper solves this because you can already compare it to the mid-tone value. As you can see on this drawing and most of my other drawings, I prefer to work on this dark grey paper. But another color that works well is burnt sienna. I would say definitely experiment with toned papers to see which one you prefer. It's best to start off with your underlayer where you're blocking in your basic shapes to your details as the last thing you do. Because of the blending abilities of pastel, it doesn't make sense to get in those details too soon. Due to the blending, you would lose those details anyway, so there's no point to getting them in your first layer. It's much better to focus on blocking in the general shapes in your first layer, trying to get the right values in where they need to be, and then refine your drawing as you add each consecutive layer. Also, don't be afraid to go back to a certain area of your drawing. Even if you already have a mid-tone paper to help you assess your piece when you start, when you add more to your drawing, you can easily assess what needs to have more highlights or more shadows and start tidying up areas. That's why you'll frequently see me go back to some areas. And these are the 5 tips I would give to you if you're just working in pastel. Like I said in the intro of the video, normally I cover my drawings a lot more in depth. If you would like to get some more details and instructions on how I finished this raya, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate your support as this helps to grow my channel and reach other people just like yourself. Hope to see you again next Friday, and in the meantime, have a great week.